What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing a react to this video right here. Is Dutch being replaced? No, but seriously. Now, I've seen videos from this YouTuber before. I've actually reacted to his videos. He's reacted to some of my videos, but this video of his is blowing up 59k views in 5 days, and this is for Dutch. Of all things, like, who speaks Dutch? Honestly, no, I'm sorry to all you Dutch lovers out there. Or those who love the Dutch. But we will be watching this video. Let's get back on point, Evildea. What the fuck are you doing, bro?
Hallo. Alleen een latte macchiato met havermelk.
Ooh, let us know down in the comment section, guys. Come on. Is he good? How good does he sound? Yeah? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being he should be aborted from the country, to 10 being he is God's gift to the Dutch speakers.
Alsjeblieft.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Okay, English.
Well, I guess that answers that question. No, but like, seriously, we've all been in this situation before, right? I just think back to the first few times I tried to use Chinese. I'd be like, you're in the restaurant, you're standing there, the waiter's waiting, they got the menu, they're staring at you, you got sweat beating, you know, mum spaghetti, all that type of shit. And you're like, and they'll be like, Brad, can you just order? I've got like 5 other people to deal with. And you're like, I'm sorry. I guess we'll just do English today. Like, we've all been there, right?
English? I saw an ad for a university the other day. In it, several staff members rave about how easy it is to live and work in the Netherlands without knowing the local language. Oh, I can study and research in English. I can other things in English. I can phone the utilities company and the tax office in English. I get the appeal. It's convenient. But as a YouTuber who bangs on about language threat and power dynamics,
I have to ask, for those who are from the Dutch-speaking community, in fact, I don't even know what countries speak Dutch, apart from Dutchistan.
that got me thinking, is Dutch itself under any threat? Now, hear me out. Obviously, it's a very healthy national language, yes, but at the same time, the fact remains that the Dutch people are some of the best and most comfortable English speakers there are.
Ooh, I guess I got a question as well then. So, is Dutch, or the Dutch-speaking community, one of those communities that does not value their own language? And they're basically like, well, if it dies, you know, shoulder, you know, up, down. Like, there is literally language communities that are like that. Like, I've seen these in the comments, and you guys have commented about this before, where some people are like, you know, I went out of my way to learn Cantonese. Someone actually mentioned this one in a previous video, so salute to whoever made that comment. And the Cantonese speakers were like, why did you spend time learning our language? Like, realistically, who needs Cantonese? And it's kind of sad in a lot of ways that, you know, people just look at their own language just like, man, it's got no value, might as well, like, ditch it. Why would you even bother learning it, even when someone's showing interest? So I'm curious about the Dutch speakers. How fanatical are they for their language?
On the most extreme end of things, I've heard personal anecdotes about Dutch people raising their kids in English. Sadly, as a Hong Konger, that doesn't even surprise me anymore.
You know what, one thing that annoys me even more than that is, like, for example, you've got parents that come to Australia, and Chinese speakers, okay, their English is absolutely broken, like, terribly broken. Like, I'm friends with these people, okay, so I'm not picking on them. They will speak only English to their kid, and I'm like, what are you doing? The kid's going to learn English perfectly fine here, okay? His English will surpass yours by the time he's 4 years old and he starts making local friends, okay? What are you doing? They're like, oh no, we're worried, you know, he won't learn English. You don't need to worry about that. In fact, you should be giving him a commercial boost by giving him your native language of Mandarin, which he'll be able to use economically in the future. So you are literally handicapping him, that's ignoring the fact that you're not allowing him to become bilingual, which has additionally so many more benefits, but it's disheartening. And realistically, this is what happened with me. So for those who don't know, okay, my mum's German. She speaks like some old dialect of German because she learned it from her grandma who moved to Australia, immigrated to Australia. So she's some very old dialect of German, okay? But she never taught it to me. She started to, but then the teachers here in Australia at that time said to her, do not speak German to him. He will never learn English. So she was worried and then stopped speaking German to me. And I know like nothing in German to this day, except for the word like Wasser. I was gonna say Ichni-san, but that's Japanese. We're gonna call it Germanese.
Now that story is most definitely far from the norm, but the Dutch Language Union does foresee the Dutch language eventually becoming a language spoken in the house with the family.
That is absolutely terrible. That is sad. Then again, this may not be true with the takeover of AI dealing with a lot of commercial interests. There will just be less of a need for English. But then again, if the European continues to integrate and unify, I could foresee possibilities that these smaller national languages are basically forgotten by their own population. They just don't care about them.
Having lost its place in the worlds of work, money, science and technology. Not on a short term for sure, but there is a tendency towards diminishing spaces for the Dutch language. All because Dutch people...
I just realized there's music! Why have people always got music? They make my life so difficult. Okay, speed up.
...are too nice. Welcome to Rhapsody Lingo. My name is Israel and I have experience learning many...
Wait, did I speed that up too much? Because now he's going like way fast.
...widely different languages, and despite what people say about...
But the music sounds like it's exactly the same speed. Like, the music sounds like it hasn't sped up at all, but then he's now suddenly going shotgun speed.
...linguistic similarity, I would actually rank Dutch as one of the hardest languages. Shocker, I know. It's on every list of easiest languages to learn for English speakers. But to me, the deciding factor is not grammar or vocabulary, but rather the one thing that Dutch people are infamous for, speaking English to you. Because
okay, so it's not necessarily the language that's difficult, it's the culture surrounding it and people not being willing to use it with you. Okay, that makes sense. So, like, some languages are harder just due to the fact that, you know, people are not willing to speak them.
They're so good at it, some might even say better than natives. When they interact with foreigners, the path of least resistance always is switching to English.
My solution in these situations is very easy. I just pretend I don't speak English. In fact, I use that as a technique here in Australia to avoid the, like, roaming salespeople on the street. And then also occasionally religious people when they come knock on the door, although I do love a good religious, battle. But, you know, they'll come up and they'll be like, oh, do you want to buy this? And I'll be like, mine pros Anglan. And they'll be like, oh, yeah. And then sometimes I'll try, like, Spanish or something. I don't know why, but they try. And I let them try, and I'm just like... It just confuses them even more.
On one hand, it makes it really easy to move here. On the other hand, that in itself constitutes the first barrier towards promoting the Dutch language. Migrants struggle to practice the language in their everyday lives. And you need to practice to get good. But if you're not good enough, it's difficult to practice. It's like work experience. I don't think anyone will disagree with me that this trait is true. So in this video, we'll entertain...
You could easily get away with the whole thing of I don't speak English. But I also understand why... Like, obviously some people don't like lying about it, but also you've spent a lot of time, obviously, getting your English quite good. So it's kind of sad that you'd have to, like, hide the fact that you speak English just to practice your Dutch.
The question of whether this could potentially lead to the demise of the language.
And because I haven't lived in the Netherlands, I'll speak to two friends of mine who have moved there.
Does yma i'r Iseldiroedd i wneud y Masters Ieithyddiaeth Indo-Ewropeaidd nes I tama.
This is Callie, my Welsh friend in the Netherlands.
Am pa iaith nes di astudio yn Leiden?
Wel, y cwrs angen rheidol I gyd yn Saesneg, ond wedyn oeddet ti'n gallu dewis gwneud rhywbeth trwy gyfrwng yr iaith.
And we'll chat about their first-hand experience and maybe struggles.
We'll look at the question from different perspectives, from the social to the linguistic. And if you like deep dive analyses of unexpected questions...
Guys, everyone subscribe to him. On Rhapsody in Lingo, the best content.
Yep, dank u wel.
Just a random kid out of nowhere. I wonder if he was like a fan of the channel.
The area where the impact is most evident is, as you might expect, customer service, especially in touristy areas. I've been to cafes and restaurants in touristy areas in Amsterdam, less touristy areas, and also here in the lesser known city, Arnhem. Oh, so that's the station I've heard so much about. Well, to be fair, my experience might not be the most representative because I look like this and am statistically more likely to be a visitor. But I sat and observed what languages people spoke, which is what I normally do anyway, and it's true, the more touristy an area is...
The way he says, you know, he sat and observed, I just got like that scene of Aragorn sitting in the corner of the pub, you know, with the black smoke and everything. He's just like blowing the pipe, going... Just watching everyone as they go by in their lives. You know the one I'm talking about from Lord of the Rings, right?
The more likely the staff workers are to open in English. It's not just my experience either, because I've heard other people say that workers wouldn't even hesitate to go to English right away just to make things easier. When I went to a restaurant of a minority culture here in Arnhem, the default language was also English, as you might expect. People always go for the path of least resistance.
Yeah, because they got a job, they got to serve people. They're not here to be your tutor, like... Obviously, they don't care. They just look at you and go, okay, foreigner. Okay, what do you want? Like, they don't want to waste any time.
The big city is where it's the hardest, says Seen, my Hong Kong friend in Amsterdam. People are busy at minding their own business, so if you struggle to speak Dutch to them, it's like you're getting in their way or putting a burden on them to help you learn. Whatever the language, they'd rather just get it over with.
Ie, maen nhw'n meddwl beth ti'n neud, pan wyt ti'n boddran. Di o ddim fel mynd I Ffrainc neu'r Eidal. Os wyt ti yn mynd mewn I siop a ti ddim yn siarad Iseldireg yn rhugl a ti'n trio, fydden nhw'n edrych arno chdi fel... Dwi'n meddwl...
I could totally see Dutch disappearing if this is the local attitude towards their own language. It's just they're just going to use English for everything all the way through school work. Yeah, it does not have a very bright future, at least within the country. Once a language stops being used at work, that means there's a large domain of the language becomes inaccessible even for native speakers of the language, and they start to forget how to use it within that domain of knowledge. And if you lose it at work, you're going to lose it quickly within education, because education's usually within the working language, okay? And from there, once you've lost all these domains, it's just... You quickly basically have a population of native speakers who are unable to fully use their own language, and therefore they just stop using it. You see it with various countries at different stages of basically losing their language.
Siarad Saesneg, wyt ti'n bod yn...
Gallu swnio'n dipyn bach yn patronising. Nawr
Yeah.
lyd,
Yeah.
os yn trio siarad eich iaith nhw. Which might seem obvious to you, but think about the implications. I've had discussions in the comment section of my Wales video talking about switching languages, and it might be difficult to switch out of the common language even if you speak the other language better, because for one, from my own experience as a polyglot, I can tell you very certainly that switching languages is not easy. There is a brain thing that you have to do.
It depends on how good you are at the language, actually, I'm going to say, because, you know, I could easily swap to Esperanto. Do exemplo, nun mi rigardas ĉi tiun filmeton, kaj li trinkas ĉiun teon. Even then, okay, when I swapped to Esperanto, there was a little bit of like a bit of a grind that happened there. But like if I was to swap to Chinese, you would hear my tones all be a mess, and then eventually they'd start to clean themselves up. For anyone who's studying multiple languages at different levels, you would definitely recognize that. And the longer you spend in it, the more like fluent you get basically at it. Obviously, you don't just randomly acquire their language, but like you get more capable at using what you do know.
And to flip the switch from one to another, it's like going
It's basically like warming up an engine.
into a different zone altogether. And more importantly, when you're working, when you're doing the same thing all day, you end up developing a sort of script for all the different customer interactions that you use. Would you like chocolate sprinkles? Do you need a bag? Is that everything? That script eventually becomes a trodden path that is really hard to steer out of. It also means that many places in cosmopolitan areas like Amsterdam and Berlin have started hiring people that don't even speak the local language because they don't need it anymore. They can talk to foreigners in English, and
Oh yeah, that's definitely going to be a death blow.
locals in those areas tend to speak English without a problem as well. Now, an increased number of foreigners who don't speak the local language doesn't necessarily mean that the local language will be diminished.
No, I'm pretty sure that that's a good indication that it's going to be diminished. Because once you get to the point where you don't even see the value of your own language within your own country, it's game over, bro. Your language is on the way out. It may just be slowly on the way out, but it's on the way out, and it would take a shift in perception towards the value of the language within the country.
But it does mean that an increased proportion of interactions, whether professional or casual, whether within foreigners or between a foreigner and a local, will take place in the foreign language, and that proportion may as well continue to rise. So imagine a Dutch person going to a cafe in a cosmopolitan area for the first time and interacting with a new barista. Neither side would be 100% sure the other one speaks the local language unless they have a very clear Dutch accent. So to save time, because it's a busy city, they might as well default to English. So you might end up with two locals speaking a foreign language to each other. It reminds me of Wales, really.
Actually, that reminds me of Esperanto meetups. You'll have like a bunch of Esperanto speakers come together and we'll all be speaking Esperanto, even though we all share, well, most of us, you know, because it's a local meetup, all share, you know, the same native language. So it's kind of funny. My wife actually commented about that ages ago. She's like, whenever you meet with your friends, you just speak Esperanto, but you're all native English speakers. Why do you bother? We're like, because it's the way the practice.
When I was there, I could never tell if someone was a Welsh speaker or not, unless I asked them or I knew them already.
Okay, well, I don't do that. I don't just randomly speak Esperanto to people walking around.
This phenomenon will likely persist and potentially expand as well. Do I think it will eventually expand to cover the entire country? Personally, no. Establishments in less urban areas have less of a reason to expect non-Dutch speakers to visit. But it's also not outside the realm of imagination that as people move around more, this defaultism could spread. What do you think?
Well, I think the EU is integrated, and depending on how politics swings within the next, 10 years or so, it may become more integrated, in which case there will be certain languages which will rise to basically being national languages of the EU, okay? Now, I'm not saying, I'm not making a political stance here. I'm just saying that if that does happen, there will be certain languages which will bubble to the top, and other languages will slowly pull backwards.
Now let's get back to the start, the thing about universities. This is an area where English has basically won. Universities want to compete internationally, which means publishing more research in English, as well as attracting international talent, whether researchers or students. And for
this reminds me quite a bit about the history of Hebrew in Israel, okay? So the defining moment for Hebrew in Israel, when it became like the language of Israel. I don't know if Israel was founded at the time or if it was slightly after or slightly before. But basically, there was a university that was started in Israel, and the working language was going to be German. And there was basically a local linguistic fight over whether it should be German, because that's the language of, the intellectual people of that time period. It was the language of science, basically. But people pushed back and they pushed for Hebrew, and then it became the language of the university, which basically cemented itself with an education, and it started to spread out from that point. So once you lose it at your education level, it's not too long after that you lose it at the workplace. In either case.
sake of streamlining, some local students also end up studying in English. Currently, around 3 out of 10 bachelor's degrees are taught in English. And if that doesn't surprise you, what about the fact that 3/4 of master's programs are taught in English? Certain institutions, such as the Eindhoven University of Technology, either teach all of the master's courses or just all of their degrees in English.
Os ti'n dod I wneud masters, bod llawer iawn o'r myfyrwyr yn dod o wledydd eraill, a bod yna ddisgwyl bod y cwrs yn cael ei gynnal yn Saesneg.
Yeah, that is a problem, I guess, if your focus is getting students from overseas. But, it's a hard one to solve this problem right here, because you can't be like, oh, well, you've got to be in Dutch, and then they're not going to be able to compete on the international stage. But at the same time, I guess it's a value proposition. Do you see the value in your own language staying at universities and accepting the fact that basically it will die over time? Basically, you're trading short-term profits of international students for your long-term cultural heritage of the language. And the value of that proposition is really on the people themselves and whether they think their language is worth, keeping. So, for example, that whole Israel thing I gave, for them, it was very, very important that Hebrew be the language for many different reasons, okay? So they literally did this in reverse. So it can be reversed. It would just be up to the local people.
Felly mae'n wahaniaeth mawr rhwng y ddwy rad.
Dwi'n meddwl yn gyffredinol bod nhw eisiau atenu myfyrwyr o wledydd eraill, felly maen nhw'n gallu gwneud mwy o bres os ydyn nhw'n cynnal y gwrs yn Saesneg. Ac erbyn hyn, mae yna dipyn o bobl sydd yn cwyno.
See, this is interesting. If you go to China and you do university courses there, I'm not aware of any Chinese courses that actually teach in English. Like, you need to speak Chinese to a decent level to take part in those courses.
Bod yn anheg, bod nhw ddim yn cael y cyfle I astudio yn Iseldireg.
But the Chinese as well are very, very proud of their own language. Well, at least the government is very proud, and it's pushing the establishment of Chinese as a language for trade, and because obviously it's vying to be a superpower. So it's like, you can see, it really comes down to the government in the end, how they want to deal with it.
Dwi'n meddwl bod rhan fwy o bobl ifanc yn derbyn y ffaith bod rhaid iddyn nhw gallu wneud o'n Saesneg hyd yn oed os nad ydyn nhw'n dewis wneud.
It's not just me being shocked by this, it's also ringing alarm bells in the industry and in the government. It is recognised that the language of education has knock-on effects on the language of the workplace and in wider society. Because of a core characteristic of this linguistic dynamic that we'll discuss later, the more non-speakers enter the workforce with a renowned Dutch willingness to accommodate in English, the further the workplace will also anglicize. In the past couple of years, the Dutch government introduced the Balanced Internationalisation Act, which requires that 2/3 of the teaching in bachelor's degrees to be in Dutch. That's to say, if 1/3 of the credits in a degree are taught in a foreign language, such as English, the degree itself will be classified as a degree taught in a foreign language.
The Dutch anderstalig onderwijs takes into account different conditions and factors
to determine whether the use of a foreign language in the degree adds value to the teaching. Otherwise, Dutch is the default language, though a bit of backlash meant that the law would only apply to newly proposed degree programmes. Will it work? Well, as a relatively small language, though almost any language is a small language in comparison to English, to achieve such a balance is nigh impossible. Any work conducted in Dutch will by default be more easily overlooked by the international academia just by virtue of being less accessible. But if you try to bolster the local academia, let's say by legislation, you risk turning away lots of research talent that could add a lot to it.
Efallai dyna'r person hefyd, jyst achos dyn nhw ddim yn bwriadu aros, felly ddim angen dysgu iaith, popeth yn Saesneg, mae'n okay. Efallai, os
What's it like in countries? Okay, so for those who are watching me, and for example, you've gone and studied in, let's say, Japan, China, France, what languages did you study in? Was the uni completely, for example, in Japan, was the uni completely in Japanese? Or did they also run it in English the courses there. I'm actually curious to see how different countries are handling the situation, and then we can get an idea about the size of the language and their willingness to protect it in comparison to being open to having more students from obviously an international environment.
Dyn nhw ddysgu bachelors, mae'n cymryd tair o blynyddoedd neu faint, felly mae'n fwy o resymau I ddysgu'r iaith ar gyfer fy dydd.
Maybe, just maybe, this is a losing battle. Maybe it's more important to keep Dutch as the social language.
I want to learn,
It won't remain the social language if it disappears from everywhere else.
but the environment is not always encouraging. I feel like I'd have more motivation if I had something tangible to grab onto, like a Dutch friend that I really vibe with. Most of my colleagues at work are foreigners as well. Living in the EU brings amazing mobility, but it also makes young people less certain where we'll be in the long term, especially in this ephemeral job market. I'll probably be more motivated if we buy a property or have a kid here. These social opportunities linked to the language shape how much the language means to me, and I don't think I can force it at this stage.
Now, when all is said and done, it all boils down to one thing. It has become too easy for Dutch people to talk to people in English. It could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. I've lived in Sweden, which has a similarly high level of English ability, and it was a common occurrence for an entire group of locals to switch to English when a foreigner joins in without even thinking about it. And they might even be stuck in English for a little bit after the foreigner has left. Obviously, I'm just talking about a general tendency. I'm not talking about everyone here.
Yeah, so this actually, I'm getting surprisingly many interesting parallels with the Esperanto community, where culturally everything has to be in Esperanto, because obviously that's the whole purpose behind the language originally created. So even though you would have everyone in the room being natives of English, if they spoke Esperanto, they would all resort to using Esperanto. Unless, of course, and this does happen with certain Esperanto meetups, where, some people, their Esperanto level is just too low. But if you get two people, their level's intermediate or above, they will swap to that language, even though they're basically hamstringing themselves in order to just use and practice the language. So it's obviously very culturally specific about how you want to deal with this issue.
Personally know some people who will be very happy to help foreigners practice their Dutch, but it's usually a conscious effort rather than the unconscious switch to English to make things easy. That's the thing that me and my friends call the Scandinavian treatment, which of course applies here as well. It's widely accepted to switch to English by default as a form of politeness and courtesy the moment you hear someone's foreign or not from here.
Pan o'ch ti'n astudio yn y Iseldiroedd, ym mha iaith o'ch ti'n cymdeithasu, yn Saesneg neu yn yr Iseldiroedd?
O'n I ffeindio eitha anodd gwneud ffrindiau efo pobl Iseldireg, y deud y gwir. Dwi'n meddwl dwi wedi clywed fod yn wahanol mewn dinasoedd eraill. Dwi'n meddwl yn Leiden bod yna split eitha rhwng myfyrwyr rhyngwladol sydd fel arfer yn cymdeithasu yn Saesneg.
A rhai lleol.
Ia, rhai lleol, a bod nhw'n cadw at ei hunan. Dwi wedi clywed bod hynna'n wahanol mewn gwledydd.
Mae yna ddwy gymdeithas wahanol ar wahân.
O'n i ffeindio, a deud y gwir, oedd gen i fwy o ffrindiau Eidaleg pan o'n i'n astudio yn Leiden, na ffrindiau Iseldireg. O'n i'n ffeindio lot haws gwneud ffrindiau trwy gyfran yr Eidaleg.
Achos ti'n gallu Eidaleg yn da iawn hefyd. Felly, oes gen ti ffrindiau Iseldireg ar hyn?
Lwcus, ar ôl 10 mlynedd.
Ar ôl 10 mlynedd. Sut wnaeth hwnna ddigwydd? Sut wnaeth hwnna dechrau?
Pan nes i ddechrau gweithio, nes i symud tŷ, mwy sydyn do'n i ddim yn canol bybl rhyngwladol yna. A doedd yna llai o bobl yn siarad Saesneg, ac wrth gwrs erbyn hyn, dwi ddim yn mynd fyny at bobl dechrau sgwrs yn Saesneg felly.
Ar y bryd hwn, oedd gen ti acen well yn barod, yng nganiad da, a wedyn o'ch ti'n cael ffrindiau newydd, o'ch ti yn y gwaith ac yn cyfarfod pobl newydd, ac yn dechrau'r cysylltiad newydd, perthnasau newydd yn yr Iseldireg, ac wnaeth yna gweithio.
I guess we're doing ALG Dutch right now, guys. Or actually, we're not. We've got subtitles, but that was a fair bit of Dutch. He must be pretty good at Dutch then.
There is a discussion to be had on whether that is an unconscious strategy to keep foreigners foreign and prevent them from participating in local communities. But what's clear is that switching
Nah, I don't think so. That does not sound realistic to me.
has become as natural as it is for a child raised bilingually. You hear a different language, or you hear your first language with an accent, something in your brain just clicks, and then you switch to an easier language for everyone without even thinking. Even the environment itself has become a linguistic mix, from advertisements to announcements to public notices to movies. It's really common to use English for special.
You'll also see this within families. So, for example, in my family, my wife speaks English, and I speak Mandarin Chinese, but her English is way better than my Chinese. Way, way better. Okay. So naturally, whenever she just talks to me, even though I speak Chinese, and there's many things she could ask, what do you want for dinner and stuff, and I would completely understand it. She just has a tendency to speak English, okay, just to ensure that there is absolutely no misunderstanding, even though I will always respond in Chinese. And it results in this very, very interesting, weird looking like scenario when we're outside, because my wife will be talking to me in English and I'll be responding in Chinese. And I'm guessing for anyone who's walking by, they must be so confused because they're seeing this Chinese girl speak in English and this white guy speak in Chinese. And we're basically doing crosstalk over here.
Effect. I mean, I was just at a concert where the signs were mainly in English and secondarily in Dutch, and the program notes were entirely in English only. Everything and everyone is perpetually ready to switch between the two languages, which sometimes reduces your opportunities for language immersion. If you look at my videos in Lithuania, you can see that my language learning depends heavily on absorbing things from the environment itself. And so the question now is whether this language fluidity will keep flowing as it does now. It's precisely this fluidity that has had an effect on the Dutch language itself as well. English and Dutch are remarkably similar languages, so it's really frictionless to adopt entire words and structures into Dutch. There's a relatively high level of code mixing, ranging from discourse markers like anyway or swear words to loan words in sectors like tech, business, higher education, youth slang.
I've kind of noticed this in Argentinian Spanish. There seems to be a lot of English that's just randomly thrown in. Then again, it may be just because of the content I'm watching, but there just seems to be a lot of English.
In advertising, you've got loans like computer, manager, meeting, deadline, upgrade, printer, like, delete, Googler, chiller. You could
Google. Googling. I like that one. I'm gonna do some Googling.
even lift entire structures and expressions from English wholesale into Dutch. There are collocations that are quickly shifting, like you're supposed to say en beslissing nemen to take a decision, but more and more people are saying en beslissing maken to make a decision. Similarly, you've got things like contact maken to make contact, as opposed to contact opnemen to take up contact, or an impact maken to make an impact, as opposed to impact hebben to have impact over someone. There are idioms that have been lifted, like in controle zijn to be in control, or dat maakt sense. And yes, they took that entire word from English in that spelling, and it only exists in this expression. You can easily borrow entire phrases and expressions like het is een ding. So,
well, I'm guessing if everyone speaks English, then yeah, naturally you could just shove the two languages and then just merge them into one.
In under of order, there are loads of these Anglicisms because they're just so damn easy to translate. Some are accepted, others less so. Mark's thing is, that's just language change. Every language has adopted heaps of foreign words into the language from whichever language was hip at the time. I'm speaking English right now, so I should be the last person to say foreign words kill a language. You could see it as a ship of Theseus kind of thing.
This is another thing that's very different to both Mandarin Chinese and I guess Esperanto. So with Esperanto, everything is Esperantoized. I don't even know how to say that in English. Like I didn't even say that in Esperanto then, but I tried to say it in English with a weird ass Esperanto like accent. But what I was trying to say, okay, is everything in Esperanto is converted into the language. And it's usually built from internally. We prefer to use internal words and structures, although some things do come from, you know, English and other languages that have made an impact on Esperanto. For example, hashioi is now kind of the go-to word for chopsticks, okay? But with Mandarin Chinese, there is very, very few words from English that get into the language, and I think it's just because of how the language is built with the characters, like the written language. It just makes it extremely difficult for English or other languages to get into the language and kind of cement themselves.
It sounds more natural. So, aan het eind van de dag, it's still Dutch. Now, this video has been more of a thought exercise. I don't really believe Dutch is in any danger, but I wondered, what if I did? Is there any evidence that suggests this possibility? But over the past few days, I've had a great experience just trying to speak their language. I told some gallery...
I don't think it's an immediate danger, but it sounds like it's not in the best of positions moving into the future. It's basically being pushed out of all the different spaces. Although it seems like the government's trying to make some moves to protect it.
Receptionist in Haarlem that I could read Dutch, and they overestimated my abilities and fully switched into language right away.
Bedankt. Dat is een beetje moeilijk. We hebben geprobeerd uit te vinden welke kunstenaar, welke kunstwerk, maar dat is heel veel in de tekst.
Ja, het is moeilijk abstract.
Abstract.
Kunstjargon.
Abstract art something . He's an honest YouTuber. He's translating what he's hearing because, you know, the hyperpolyglots, the bullshitter glots, okay? They will say something and literally they'll say, me, hungry. And then they'll write out, I believe at this moment I am very hungry. Like, they'll just, like, buff out the subtitles with all this extra stuff to make it look like they said so much more, okay? I like that he's just like, yeah, no, that's what I understood, guys. We're just going to leave it at that.
Maar ik hou van de kunst. I casually said sorry in a Dutch accent to some teenage girls for getting into their way, and they responded, het maakt niet uit, without even giving a thought. There were some kids and also a waitress who kept talking Dutch to me until it was abundantly clear that we had reached the extent of my abilities. Hello?
YouTube.
Yes, that's...
Which account?
Which account? Rhapsody in Lingo.
Huh?
Rhapsody in Lingo.
I thought he said Rap City Lingo. Not Raspadian. Okay, so yeah, I literally thought he said Rap City Lingo.
Ik spreek over talen. ik leer talen.
Oh, praat je gewoon Nederlands?
Een beetje. Ik versta een beetje meer.
Oh,
Maar ik kan niet spreken.
Seen has had
No, I can't speak it. Poor guy.
many similar experiences. Sometimes I meet Dutch people who don't often work or socialise in an international setting, and they actually keep speaking Dutch to me despite my limited abilities. And they only switch when it's apparent that I can't continue the conversation anymore.
So none of the see this face and switch instantaneously that you might expect, or that I've heard so much about, could be a pronunciation thing.
Wel, dwi'n meddwl, pan o ti'n dechrau dysgu Iseldireg, bod hi'n bwysig iawn ymarfer
This is true. Any language, important to get the pronunciation down when you start learning.
ynganiad. Dwi'n meddwl na ddyn sy'n bwysig, achos os oes gen ti ynganiad rhyfedd, os ydy o'n amlwg i bobl bod chdi yn dysgu, fydden nhw'n ymateb yn Saesneg yn syth.
Now I've been speaking from an outsider perspective, from observations and from data, but at the core this is a question of balance. Balance between being good at a foreign language and not letting it take over your native. And you know what? That's the kind of thing I do on the daily.
But do Dutch people consider English actually to be a foreign language? Or do they just consider themselves to be bilingual and both of those languages are their native language and they just speak it basically with a regional accent? Like, is it just Dutch English at this point?
Lots dedicate their everyday life to engaging in activities in each of the languages just to give them attention evenly and maintain their skills. Or if you look at my English and my native Cantonese, as a UK resident, I'm also struggling to maintain this balance. We only have so much brain space and, more importantly, time and attention. Now,
100% that one time.
imagine the same struggle, but on a countrywide scale and among non-language nerds. Dwi ddim yn siŵr os dyna rhywbeth ymwybodol neu anymwybodol.
Ie.
Beth ydyn meddwl?
Dwi'n meddwl bod yn dibynnu efo pwy ti'n siarad.
Ocê.
Dwi'n meddwl bod rhai pobl yn falch bod chdi'n trio dysgu iaith nhw.
Y cwestiwn ydy faint o bobl sy'n fach, neu
Ie.
faint sydd jyst yn... Dwi ddim yn ots.
Ond dwi'n meddwl bod, rhai pobl yn ffeindio fo'n embarrassing os ydyn clywed rhywun efo acen rhyfedd.
Second-hand cringe. Dwi'n bach.
Ie, yn union.
But, on a table of Dach, we can't really prophesize the future. Unlike some of the other languages I've covered here, Dutch is scarcely under any threat of replacement or endangerment, especially compared to local languages here. It's a strong and healthy national language, even if the nation is relatively small, and it's not like there's a government trying to stamp it out.
Seen is going through the naturalisation process, and she tells me that
I don't think that means much. I think people underestimate... Because it only takes a generation or two for a language to disappear. You know, like if we're talking naturally, if the young people of that language decide to just not use it anymore, okay, it would only take a generation, two, maybe three tops for it to completely disappear. Doesn't matter how many speakers it's got. If it's culturally not seen as cool or valuable anymore, she's a gonskis. She's gone. Like, size does not matter realistically. Now, obviously, there's more than enough materials online, you know, books, whatever. They could easily revive the language. Hell, they've revived much smaller languages. But there is a risk that it could disappear pretty quickly. But I also saw it was spoken in multiple countries, but I don't know how it's going in those other countries. And I'm pretty sure some of those were just Afrikaans, which is, in my mind, a separate language. And from what I've heard, that one's not in the best of states.
in fact, the government is expected to raise the language requirement for citizenship to B1. Make of that what you will.
B1? That's pretty low. I'll be honest, okay? Like, I know my wife had to go through an English test here, and she basically, because she's not an immigrant, but to become a permanent resident. And I can't remember what the IELTS level she needed or something was, but it was higher than 6 something. Maybe I'm getting that number wrong, okay, but it was hard for her.
When asked to reflect on her experience of naturalisation, she says, "The fact that you don't have to speak Dutch to be able to build a life here is a very attractive factor about moving here as a foreigner. The flip side is that people need to take more personal initiative in learning the language. This totally fits with the individualistic mentality of the Dutchies."
What we can't deny is that the high levels of English ability have meant that the Dutch people are relatively in tune with the English-speaking world. Will that eventually tip the balance and turn Dutch culture into an extension of Anglophone culture? Probably not.
Or it'll just become another English-speaking country.
At least not in the near future. But it's not like something like this hasn't happened before. But more importantly, is it still worth learning Dutch? Of course, I don't speak it personally, but it's a beautiful
Wait. Well, what language you been speaking this whole time, my man? You seem to be speaking it. Was he not speaking Dutch the whole time? I'm now wigging out.
language, even if native speakers never say so, with a lot of fun quirks and sayings. And especially if you live in a country, it greatly enriches your experience of the culture and, of course, its basic respect. Too bad it's going to be underwater in like the next decade. If you also want to practice speaking future Atlantean, check out the video where I broke down how I improve my speaking at each level. And if
Okay, awesome. That was actually a pretty interesting video overall. So this is his channel right here, guys. Go check it out. Give him a sub. Let's have a look at some of these comments. Tip to speak Dutch in the Netherlands. Try speaking it to old people, 70 plus, while in public transport. That's what I mean. This is a bit of a concern. They're happy to tell you their whole life story. Well, that's kind of true if you do that in any country, okay? But yeah, overall, good video. So, if you guys have enjoyed this video and my reaction, you know what you need to do. Like the video, sub to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, well, you better be working out because I'm coming for you, boy. Or girl.